When people talk about the magic of filmmaking, I imagine they're talking about films like Hundreds of Beavers, a silent black and white indie slapstick comedy about an Applejack maker who must become the world's greatest fur trapper to win the hand of a merchant's daughter. Yeah, it's ridiculous, and it won't be for everyone, but I don't think anyone can deny its refreshing originality. What's interesting is that this originality stems from its stealing of the past. Hundreds of Beavers is an excellent example of borrowing from other works to invent something new. We don't see many movies like this nowadays. In spirit, movies that pride themselves on originality and take bold, creative risks, but also in form. Silent slapstick comedies are largely a thing of the past, and in many ways so is filmmaking that celebrates stylized, expressive play. Personally, I wish more films embrace this kind of approach. Too often today, most mainstream Hollywood comedies rely on actors talking at each other instead of using the tools of the craft. Every Frame a Painting pointed this out a decade ago, but it's still very much true.
Boom. Dream cream.
What did you just say?
Dream cream.
Like them, I'm not against talky comedies. I've got no shortage of favorites. But Hundreds of Beavers reminds us that visual gags still have a place, if we remember how to make them. Visual comedy is a style that conveys jokes through what the audience sees rather than what is said, using physical performance, visual storytelling, and the tools of the medium. Punchlines can land through a pan, a cut, or even through simple VFX. The payoff is golden, proving you don't need mountains of cash to create an excellent gag, just inspiration.
We were just limited to this principle of it's this guy and animal costumes and snow. So like every idea has to involve those elements, but once you accept that, it can be as big of an idea as we want. You need to like pick a look that you can actually achieve a full piece with. And yeah, I think like with movies, I wonder why indie filmmakers are like having 30-person crews and like trying to imitate a Hollywood look. Like you should just accept that you're like this like punk little movie.
Using mixed media, the filmmakers could deliver jokes by exaggerating the way images, actions, and visual juxtapositions are presented. But despite the modern production methods, the soul of the film, the timing, choreography, and staging, is undeniably influenced by the slapstick traditions of the 1920s. One of its biggest influences is Buster Keaton, a pioneer of the form who believed comedy should move. He minimized the use of title cards because he believed that action was enough to communicate narrative and emotion. Keaton's gags were built around clear spatial relationships, where every move had a simple cause and effect, and the humor came from watching that chain of events unfold. While Hundreds of Beavers doesn't live or die by life stunts the way Keaton did, its mixed media approach preserves his core principle. Action remains the driving force of comedy. It does this by following a few classic slapstick principles, things that might seem obvious but are key to making the comedy work. There's the setup, which establishes a premise, repetition, which returns a gag, anticipation, which cues what's coming, and surprise, which delivers the payoff. Another classic element in slapstick is the humble prop. Hundreds of Beavers plays with props by repurposing and reimagining them in a cartoonish way. Complementing props, sound provides another dimension to the comedy by giving objects and scenes distinct personalities. There are the expected goofy effects, and carefully timed musical cues, either to punch up a joke or undercut it entirely. But it's not just what fills the frame, action, props, and sound, but also how you frame it, with the very composition of a scene serving as a tool. Buster Keaton understood this better than anyone. His compositions were precise, his staging intentional. For Keaton, the camera's frame was the boundary of reality. Since the audience only sees what the camera shows, each gag must live inside that space, across height, width, and depth. Like Keaton, Hundreds of Beavers often uses clear framing, visual symmetry, and patient pacing to tell jokes. The effect can sometimes resemble the flat lateral presentation of stage plays, where the view is static in perspective, but the movement inside it is dynamic. But it also calls to mind something else. Video games. Hundreds of Beavers frequently adopts a video game logic. It shows up in far-off castles that only open once you've leveled up, in retro 8-bit landscapes, and in this awesome log run.
Well, it's like a combination, obviously, of like just like general game mechanics, but I love Zelda, so that's why the shopkeeper's in there. We aped the like Ocarina of Time shopkeeper theme. I love indie games that pick a lo-fi style and then make an entire good game with like 2 people. We can see this whole project and look around our resources the way that an indie game does.
Side-scrolling framing turns the screen into something almost playable. I mean, this shot could easily include a character prompt. The story is basically an RPG speedrun. You start at the bottom with nothing, grind pelts like XP, and eventually tackle the final boss once you're fully loaded. The whole fur trapping cycle, bait, trap, and repeat, is very much a video game loop. And maybe true to life?
Trapping is just funnier than hunting. 3 days later and your trap failed and you don't really understand why. It's just a tedious, funny trade to build a movie around.
Hundreds of Beavers builds a film around many pieces we recognize, but the result feels entirely new. It shows what happens when filmmakers fully embrace play and their craft. With a tiny budget, it delivers visual comedy that dialogue alone could never carry, creating wildly inventive moments that draw freely from silent films, slapstick, cartoons, and video games without ever feeling derivative. Through the gags, the traps, and the beavers, we're reminded that comedy as cinema is at its most magical when the medium itself carries the punchline.